Hello and welcome to Jen's Thoughtful Tuesday Turnaround. My name is Jen Trum and I am a human resources leader for over 20 years and also a certified life coach. This program is something that I have put together to do weekly to act as a follow-up to another podcast and livecast I do called Thrive and Shine HR. Thrive and Shine HR is a program that I do with Catherine Fry. And as both HR professionals and now coaches, we talk about every week different topics that really matter in the field of HR that are many times overlooked in so many ways. And so today, what we're going to be talking about is a follow-up to yesterday's episode, and it's around uncertainty. And a thing that came up when Catherine and I talked about it in episode 22 was really about how so often I think we are not really aware of how our need to feel certain is holding us back. Our need to know, our need to feel comfortable and safe because we have all the information that we feel like we need that keeps us safe. And that sense of safety is so subconscious for many of us that it can be really hard to even be aware of that there might be ways that we're holding on from letting ourselves be okay with not having all the answers and continuing to move forward or continuing to do whatever it is that we need to do. So what I want to do today is I want to arm us with some ways that we can really start practicing embracing uncertainty, because the title of the episode is that practice of embracing uncertainty is really, I think, a key to help unlocking our ability to have such a more fulfilled and realized lives. And I think so many of us have this sense that we know that there's more. We know that we're capable of more. Like there's a knowing deep within us. And yet, because we don't have all the answers, we put off, we delay, we self-sabotage. Maybe I know that is a big one for me. So what are those ways where we are not really then moving in a direction where our deeper knowing, our deeper soul knows that we're meant to go? And that's a toughie. And only you, right? You can have a therapist, you can have a coach, you can have all these people that you work with all the time. But if you're not being deeply honest with yourself around what it might be that you're holding on to, that you're struggling with being able to move forward because you don't feel like you have all the answers yet, this is going to be a good episode for you. This is going to be a good one for you to start maybe taking those small steps, because that's what my first recommendation is for those out there who feel as though there's something more, and yet they have struggled with really taking that first step. And that's where it's at, really, is starting small. So my first piece of advice for anyone who is wanting to practice embracing more uncertainty in their own lives: start very small, right? Start with picking up something new at the grocery store. Start with walking a new path to work. Start with anything that feels a little bit outside the comfort zone. I think for those of us who don't practice that, as we get older and older in life, especially if we have a job that we pretty much feel pretty comfortable in, we've got the family situation, a lot of those things are in place, and I'm good. And I really think I had a conversation with someone just yesterday about that. I think there's so many of us, we're in the very back of our minds, we're kind of waiting for that moment where we can just kind of let go and be like, okay, I'm good. I can just breathe and let go. And unfortunately, if we really want to live a life well lived, I think it's great to have those moments where we take a little vacation, we go off with the family, we hit the beach, we can let go for those moments, but don't do it for more than a few weeks. Certainly don't do it for more than a few months. Because the longer that we get into that lethargic, I'm done, I'm good, I don't need to keep pushing myself and challenging myself, the more that it gets harder to do this step number one, which is taking small steps. So find little ways, all right, find little ways to challenge yourself outside of your own comfort zone and really start small. Start in a way that you feel comfortable with to say, you know what, I can do this. And then maybe tomorrow I'll try that. And wherever that goes is for you and only for you in terms of what that challenging can look like. But recognize that part of the journey in life, I think, is to really be able to experience more. And so when it comes to what those little challenges outside of our comfort zone look like, come on, show up for yourself. Show yourself that you can kind of get outside that comfort zone a little bit, because you're going to find that then you can start maybe stepping it up a little bit and stepping it up a little bit. And so then that will then like can take you to what might move you to that next level. So the next one I want to encourage you to consider is challenging your assumptions. One of the assumptions that I had about myself before I left my HR job to go into coaching was that I was too old, that I had an assumption that I was too late, that I was, already kind of past my prime in some way, like this buildup of a belief in my head that had me going for a while, that I wasn't somehow good enough to be able to do, something new at a more advanced, mature age of my life. And that's just bullshit. That's total bullshit. And there's so many other assumptions that I know that we all have about ourselves in areas that really matter. And so being thoughtful, being kind to ourselves when we challenge those types of assumptions, where we can see where we might be holding back and we might be allowing ourselves to make excuses. And so having that grace and compassion with yourself is really going to go a long way. But challenging them, calling them out, bringing them to the surface and saying, hey, my real dream is X, Y, or Z. And here's an assumption that I've been building up over the last 10, 15 years. Is it really true? Is this really true? Or is this something I've been telling myself that's reality, when in reality, it's not? And so those challenging assumptions can sometimes, for some people, bring up some emotions around shame. I wish I would have, kind of gone through this sooner and that sort of thing. Don't spend a lot of time with that. Pass right over that. Acknowledge it. Recognize it's there. It's there for a reason. Those types of emotions really help us learn and help us grow. So perhaps we may be able to kind of build that for the future, but don't dwell in it. Don't pity party in it, right? Move on from it. All right, number 3 is learning to adapt. When it comes to embracing uncertainty, when it comes to really being more adaptable to change, having the ability to kind of learn the different skills that don't ruffle us up quite so much, don't shake us, to the core the way that they used to. I think building up different tolerances is a huge benefit that so many of us can really be able to build more into our lives. Next one is, and I talk about it every time, but it's so important, is cultivating mindfulness. And for me, one of the things that I thought about before this episode is, when it comes to mindfulness, where does that really help me around uncertainty? And for me, where I've really noticed it helps is each day, one of the things that I try to do is, before I really get moving on my day, I try to kind of give myself a big picture of what I have to anticipate for the day. What are the big What are the big obstacles that might be in my way? What are the big things that I might need to overcome? And what is it that I'm really hoping I can most accomplish for that day? And when I do that, when I start to tease out what I'm looking forward to for the day to come, always, inevitably, some uncertainty is going to arise, whether it comes in the form of self-doubt, whether it comes in the form of confusion, whether it doesn't matter, right? That uncertainty starts to bubble up as soon as I start to kind of position my brain around the day to come. And mindfulness is really about kind of gut checking those things, because just like in the earlier one where we talked about like questioning the assumptions, this is another time where that can come up plenty. It comes up a plenty of all of the things that I start to worry and doubt and get confused about for the day to come, and starting to question those as well and say, wait a second, is any of this based in fact? Has any of this happened yet? Or is it just my anxiety, which is totally fine and totally normal? But really becoming clear on that from the get-go and compartmentalizing that helps me exponentially when it comes to then addressing the uncertainty that might arise throughout the day. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, once I've kind of done some gut checking around what's the worst that could happen, what's the best that could happen, right? And really kind of having some clarity, then as those unpredictables are bound to come, right? And as those start to kind of pop in, I don't get quite so rattled about it. And I think that's one of the things with mindfulness that can really help in so many ways, is like sometimes mindfulness is just about doing a little pre-planning and having a little bit of time to be able to anticipate potentially some of the things that can get in our way, and some of the things that then can create more of that anxiety that can build throughout our day. The next one is experimenting. Try some new things. Challenge yourself this next day to come or this next week to come. Where is a particular area in your life that you feel a bit unsettled? And where is something that you might be able to sprinkle in to that area that could experiment doing it a little bit differently, or doing a little branch of it a little bit differently? Hard to know what that might look like for you, but a good example of that could be, I know for me, one of the things that I struggle with is my daily routine, right? Like has to do with exercising, eating, mindfulness, meditation, journal. There's like 30,000 things that on a good day that I'd like to be able to do when it comes to my morning routine. And it's redonkulous to think that I have the time to do it all. So what I have to be able to do sometimes is kind of play with different things based on my mood. And that's been kind of a newer thing for me over the last year or so. And I really like it. And it requires me to go outside the box and the conventional, here's your XYZ steps, right, that you're going to do every single day. And it really brings in a little bit more fluidity. And so there is a discipline factor with that. And so for those out there that struggle with discipline, may not be the immediate go-to, but the idea behind it is really experimenting in a way that works for me, and then adding discipline into it, and then also being fluid and open based on how I show up day to day. Right? Because we just don't always know what that's going to be. We don't always know sometimes how we might get T-boned the day before. And now we're in a state of really needing to work out some big emotions that have risen up for us. That for me is one of the things that always takes priority. And as a coach, it's one of those things that when I talk to clients, when I talk to different people, they really find that like something difficult to like kind of understand why that is so significantly important to me. But for me, and I'll kind of go back to it a little bit, but when I have an event happen, let's say I have an event happen, wasn't planning on it, and it hit me pretty tough, whether it's because it had anger rising up in me that I wasn't expecting. Maybe it had some fear rise up in me that I wasn't expecting. One of the things that I've learned to do is to sit with it, to be intentional whenever something happens, an event, a circumstance happens that really kind of rocked me, and to sit with it, because there is always something more going on in those. And when it comes to trying to embrace and understand kind of the uncertainty that sometimes holds us back, it's in these events, it's in these moments that I really, really believe that the nuggets find their way. And we can really start to have more clarity on what it is that might be under the surface holding us back, when we can start to kind of sit more with the uncomfortable. All right, the next the next recommendation I have for anyone struggling and wants to embrace more uncertainty is to practice resilience. Practicing resilience is something that is really tough for many of us, and I know for myself to do, because once I have an event happen and it's over and I've gone over the hump, I want to be out of there. I want to be so freaking gone and beyond that situation. I don't want to sit with it. I don't want to actually like take the time to like learn from it, right? Who wants to do that? We want to be on to the next thing. But here's what I'm here to offer you. When it comes to practicing resilience in our lives, learning from our mistakes, learning from our stumbles and our tumbles and our slips and trips, it really makes a difference. And so that's where, in that last example, kind of sitting with the suffering a little bit, what you get out of it is like tenfold. Not only are you kind of learning how to be able to recognize what's under the surface, but you're also starting to really get to know yourself in a new way when you take those moments and come back to the things that we're trying to not repeat, right? Because ultimately, when these slips, trips, falls, stumbles, all those things happen, the goal is we don't want that to continue to happen. We want to break patterns. We want to be able to actually grow and learn. But yet, so many of us struggle from like that slowing down process to really understand, what is it we are meant to learn? What is it that we really need to learn to be able to grow? And my friends, there is something pretty powerful in not only what is kind of under that surface to learn from, but also the resiliency you will gain within yourself, because you have had the courage to be able to kind of slow yourself down enough. Because it's not easy, right? It takes bravery to actually go back into the uncomfortable and unsettling emotions that stirred us up in the first place. So trust me, I get it. But yet when you do, again, the gifts that you're bound to receive, the plentiful gifts you will receive, you can thank me later. All right, the next one is embracing imperfection. So here is like such a great segue, right? When I'm encouraging you to go in, go deeper, because if you want to learn to embrace uncertainty, you've got to become more comfortable with the uncertainty within yourself, blah, blah, blah. And here's what it comes down to is we've got to just learn how to truly embrace everything about yourself, the good, the bad, the up, the down, everything. Because when you can actually just come to a place and be able to sit, stand, lean, whatever you're doing, and completely embrace yourself exactly as you are without needing to change anything right in this moment, it just is. And it's okay, right? We can have some regret, we can have some frustration about some of the crap we've done in the past, and then we can say, I am pure and whole exactly as I am now, and I want to continue to get better. I want to continue to grow. But it's in the embracing of the imperfections of the right here, right now, that really, for me, and so many others who have done this work, it's the unlocking of so much, because it's that self-awareness, it's the self-love that is needed to embrace all of it that's right in front of you right now. So finding the path towards that, whatever that looks like for you. I know a lot of people speak to yoga, and they speak to so many different practices, Reiki, so many different ways to try to kind of unlock whatever it might be that keeps you from embracing you without any ifs, ands, and buts about it. So recognizing that there's a gap, I think first and foremost, again, going back to only you know. So I could kind of pause here and just say, hey now, what does that look like for you? And if there is any gap in a fully embracing of your imperfect self, then that's work. And that's okay. That's completely okay. That is something that I need to come back to all the time. I am not a perfect person standing in front of you going, oh, no problem, you got this. No, it's something that I have to come back to daily. So it's okay when there is a gap, but the key is to be able to say, yes, there's a gap. And yes, I'm going to continue the practice of everything that I can do each and every day, so I can embrace my imperfections. So then I can actually start showing up with the love that I can give everyone else from a place of being able to truly recognize my own worth. All right, next one, we're almost done. Next one is building a support system. So having support and building that support system for yourself. I tried to do it by myself for way too long. And if you know me, you know. And now I'm at a pivot point in my life over these last couple of years where having a support system has been, by and large, the most impactful thing I've ever done for myself. Because yeah, the more that you can embrace yourself and your imperfections, hot dog, it's pretty amazing. But when you do not have the support around you, it will break down. It's not enough. And so finding that support, whatever that looks like for you, is paramount to a life well lived. And for me, when I finally truly gave up my need to numb myself with alcohol, it was finding AA. And it's like something I never thought I would be so proud of, but it truly is such a prideful thing for me to have a community that I know accepts my imperfections just as much as I'm accepting my own. And that's the key when it comes to support system. Make sure that they accept you for who you are today. Don't try to find a support system that is wanting you to be something different than you are today in order to receive the acceptance that you know deep down that you're worthy of today. Because that is a gap that is a really difficult one to bridge. I know, because I've tried to force feed myself. I've square peg in the round hole into communities that I did not fit in, because one, because I wasn't there myself, but two, because the community themselves included individuals where they weren't there themselves. And so you have to be able to find those who are similar to you in terms of that desire, not only for where you are today, but also for where you want to go tomorrow. All right, last one is reflect and learn. Going back to what I said a little bit earlier today, take opportunities regularly to check in with yourself around where you're at compared to where you want to be when it comes to uncertainty, and embracing uncertainty and becoming more open to embracing the uncertainty. Because the more that you reflect on it, the more then you can pivot. The more that you can say, hey, you know what? I'm recognizing that in this area of my life, I'm kind of killing it. I'm doing pretty well. But in that area of my life, I am really holding on rock hard to needing to have certainty, to needing to have control, right? And those things are your telltale signs that that might be an area, that reflection, that learning, that giving a little bit of space to potentially could be a huge opening for you in your life. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap up and say, look, when it comes to embracing uncertainty, it's not an easy path. It's not an easy path to get to a point where you are wide open and completely okay with everything that will come, that everything that has come, it's all good. I don't think there's a person on the planet, past, present, or future, who could ever say that. And I think the more that we can together be able to have these conversations and be able to be open and honest around how embracing uncertainty sucks sometimes, especially in some areas of our lives where it's really hard parenting for me, right? It can be really hard embracing uncertainty. But the more that we can just be honest about it, the more open we can be about it, the more I think it's going to give all of us permission to be able to embrace ourselves and our truth in a much more open and loving way. All right, well, with that, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't already, please download this podcast. Thoughtful Tuesday Turnaround is downloaded and uploaded each week as a podcast and also as a video cast. So would love for you to join me however it works best for you. And thanks again, and we'll see you next week.